Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voices of Resilience. I apologize that we're a little bit late. I had some technical difficulties. You can blame this guy. I'm so excited for you all to be here with us today. You can see a new background here. It's a beautiful day, so we're outside, and it's wonderful. If you are new to Voices of Resilience, if you've never been here before, just wanted to share this is a time where we're going to talk through stuff that are good things to talk about, hard things to talk about. We're going to talk about how we can be more resilient because we all need to learn how to be more resilient because let's face it, our world has thrown us a billion curveballs in 2020, and that's a great example of why we need to learn how to bounce back and have and if you've never heard of Lost and Found before, we are here. We are an organization that focuses on providing resilience and preventative mental health measures for young adults. So we step into that gap and try to give people tools for success and give them tools to be more and more resilient so they can handle the things that life throws at them, so they can bounce back better, stronger, everything in between. And today we have a brand new guest, someone who I'm super excited to have on our show, livecast. I don't know. I'm going to call it a show. It sounds more fun. On our show, we have Michaela Seiber from South Dakota State University. And, you just told me what your title was, and I just
Research coordinator.
Research coordinator. And she has done some incredible research that we're going to talk about here. I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a moment and give us a little bit more insight into who she is and her background. But I want to encourage any of you watching, if you have questions, shoot it to us in the Facebook chat. We can pull it up here if we want to engage with you. We want to hear what you want to ask. So if you have questions, throw it out here. And now I'll turn it over to you, Michaela. Why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Michaela. I currently live in Sioux Falls. I grew up in Sisseton, South Dakota. I am an enrolled tribal member of the Sisseton-Wahpeton-Wayate. I graduated with my Master's of Public Health from USD in 2016. And I do now work at STSU in the College of Pharmacy as a research coordinator. But today I'm going to talk more from the lens of a nonprofit I work with, the Transformation Project South Dakota, which is a new little baby organization. And we've been doing some storytelling projects there. So that's a little bit
Baby organizations are the best.
Yes, they are. I think that's a brief little overview. I'll get into more stuff. I don't want to jump ahead of the questions or anything. So
yeah, well, no worries whatsoever. Like I said, I'm super excited because deep down inside, I'm a bit of a data nerd. I love research. I love it. And I always find it so fascinating. So I'm pretty geeked out a little bit about what we get to find out today and what we get to talk to you about here. So I guess you kind of briefly touched on it, but can you just expand on a little bit more on your work for all the folks watching now or later?
Yeah. So like I said, a lot of the stuff I'll talk about today is through a lens of a couple nonprofits I work on, one being the Transformation Project. I'm the vice chair on this group that is just a little over a year old. And our mission is to really support trans folks around the state of South Dakota, their families, and also educate the community to help everyone understand what gender identity is and gender expression and how that looks in different populations in our state. So we have been doing this really wonderful storytelling project. It started last year when our group just started. And what we've been doing is going around the state, kind of chronicling trans folks ages like 10 all the way to 39 and photographing them, talking to them, hearing their story about identifying as trans in this state and the struggles and, the awesome things about finding those words and coming out. And there's also that data piece to it. So we're also, getting a lot of really useful information on a population we don't hear about enough in South Dakota. And, we have some legislation that comes forward and different policies that come forward. And it's really helpful to have local data to help support real policies that will benefit this community. So that's it in a nutshell. yeah, we had our first publication. So we put it into a magazine, all of these stories and the different data we've collected, and a little baby analysis of the work we did in year one. It's in a magazine, magazine format. And we started year 2 right now. So we're hoping this is an annual thing we can do. And this year we had twice as many participants interested in being featured in the magazine. So I envision this will keep growing every year.
And I love that you're focusing on stories, because I think the power of stories is, one, to not be undersold. We talk about, you can relate to someone if you understand their story. You can connect to them if you understand their story. I mean, you think about it. You can sit and talk to someone for hours who has a great story or is a great storyteller. So I love that you're focusing in on stories, because I think that makes everything more relatable, more connected, more just more engaging. And like I said, you understand it from a different level when it's a story. But not to just, I don't mean to just like jump right in, but kind of I do. I don't want to miss anything important here, but I just, from the broadest possible perspective, digging in as deep as you want, of course. What have you learned through your research on trans individuals in our state?
I think there's definitely a few different topics, and we can go super deep. So we'll see how it goes. But overall, just South Dakotans in general don't understand gender identity and the language around gender identity. And that's really the biggest thing, I've seen from reactions about the work that we've been doing. We've found that, and we already do this, that there's a huge gap in knowledge around gender identity and sexual orientation. So that's, I guess, from folks who don't identify as trans, is there's a huge knowledge gap and a misunderstanding, and the stories have really helped to fill that gap. But from just thinking about all the participants in the magazine, so we had 14 the first year, and that consisted of like a photo shoot and a probably 1 hour interview. So like, if we think about research, it would be like a qualitative research study. We're going back and looking closer at those interviews. And this year we have over 25 who have signed up. And so far, I think we've photographed maybe 10. So we have, about, I'm thinking 25-ish that I'm drawing from right now. But overall, there's definitely been a lot of struggles being in South Dakota and having an identity that's not considered the norm and not understood by a lot of people. But there's just, right now, it's a beautiful time. Like, there's so many resources and the visibility is wonderful. And like, this Voices of Resilience, like these kids and folks are super resilient. Like, that's the word for sure of what I'm learning. And there's a lot of nuances with that, but overall, I don't know, and this is one of your questions later too, but I'm very hopeful about how things are going.
Michaela, just out of curiosity, you said you have 25 people that you're talking to currently. Are any of those repeats from people you've talked to before? Are these all brand new people that are coming to talk? That's awesome.
They're all brand new. Last year we were pretty focused on Southeast South Dakota, which is, where I live and where we have the most population anyway for the state. So this year we are seeing it branch out to more into Northeastern South Dakota and even the west side of the state. So it's not only new people, but like from total different geographical area than we covered last year. So
that's awesome. And just because, I don't know where we have people watching from, not just physically, but also what their background and connection is with research. So can you maybe just give a brief overview? You said it was qualitative research. Maybe just touch on that. So as we're stepping into this space, people know where we're coming from. Because I think even for someone who's a research nerd like myself, sometimes I don't know how to communicate the nuances between the two very clearly.
Yeah. So qualitative research, that's, what this is. It's more of the interview type stuff. So it's not so much surveys and running numbers and, doing all of these like logistical, statistical analysis type things. It's more of these kind of conversations. And there are a lot of ways to analyze that data. You can get into like the software that you use and you code it, and then you find the themes, and then you draw comparisons and find the differences. And so qualitative is really like probably the more interesting part of research, I think, for me anyway. If you like stories and like seeing those quotes and that kind of stuff. So that's really the difference. Is quantitative is more focused on like those numbers and, you know, those big like SPSS doing big analyses. And I'm not great at that. And I enjoy qualitative research. It takes a ton more time and effort, but it's more fruitful for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that clarification, because I knew you could do a better job of explaining than me. I guess in your research, what have you seen in regards to the mental health of those people you've chatted with? You know, I mean, there's some generalities for people who are part of the trans community and their mental health, and I don't want to dig into those and potentially steal your thunder of any sort of.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what you've learned from those that you've talked to, but also what you've learned from the community at large.
Yeah. So like going into this, I mean, I first got into like this. I've been doing research for 5 to 6 years. That's been my like career up until now, and kind of jumped into like this advocacy side of it, which is what I'm doing, is pairing research with like this advocacy and social justice issues. So we knew going into this that trans and non-binary people have much higher rates of self-harm attempts and suicide attempts and depression and anxiety. And we knew that going into this, and that's well substantiated in research before this. So we did know that going into it. We didn't know what to expect in South Dakota. No one's ever done a close examination of our state. And so actually in 2018, I was the president of South Dakota Public Health Association. And we did a survey at Pride. So it was the Terrace Park. So we had a paper survey and online survey. People could come in and answer some questions for us. And, you know, starting there, we really got a good look at what, at least folks who came to Pride, kind of what we were working with. So the trans youth that fill out the survey, I believe it was probably around 60 to 70% did answer yes to that they had harmed themselves and thought about suicide and attempted suicide, which is about what we see nationally. But then when we broke it down to those folks who identified as non-binary, they 100% across the board had self-harmed, thought about suicide, and attempted suicide. And that's something we're still seeing across these interviews that we're doing. And we just started asking some more demographic questions this year, and last year we kind of just let it flow and see what direction it went. And those struggles came out in the interviews. You know, we crafted our questions to try to capture the whole picture of what gender identity is in the state. So we're definitely seeing that with the folks we're talking to. So it's coming out. So we got a little peek at it in 2018, and now we're seeing like the stories behind those answers now in the last couple of years.
That's impactful when 100% of the people you talk to have have attempted self-harm or suicide. I mean, wow, that's...
Yep, I know. It was a pretty shocking thing. And I first started, I heard the term transgender when I was in college. So I'm 31 now. So I was probably 10 years ago, and some of these kids are learning about it when they're 6 or 7. So they're already starting to like hear those words and use that language. So I'm hoping just that visibility and that knowledge will help us kind of shift those numbers. And non-binary, I hadn't heard of that term probably, even 8 years ago. It's something that we're also seeing a lot of kids 14 and under are really comfortable identifying as non-binary. They're finding where they fit in this world, and they're super confident about it, and it's wonderful. But those numbers are scary because it's also very comparable to national numbers for non-binary youth.
That's yeah,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that's just it is such a new, I'd say, new part of our conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I just think that it was, I don't want to throw it out there, but I'm a couple of years older than you, and I know that based on what you said, I was like, oh, but I still think that when I was there, in college, we were just touching on that as I was leaving and
Mm-hmm.
going to school in South Dakota here. It's like it just was so outside the realm of conversation or what people even
Yep.
talked about or thought about, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's good that we're talking about it because the needs are so apparent. Like how if we aren't having these conversations and aren't sharing this, um, how are we going to know?
Exactly. That was really one of the main goals of the magazine and this organization is to start that conversation. And we've already seen knowledge improve so much from the baseline from supporters who really they didn't know how to get into this work or even the words to use, so they didn't know how to support this community, and now we're giving them those words. We're showing them that there is a really actually substantial population of folks in South Dakota who identify as trans or non-binary. So
Yeah,
that was the goal, one of the goals of the magazine.
yeah. And I'm just going to toss this up here quick. We'll bring it back up later. But if you're listening to this right now and you want to know about where you can find these stories and you want to see where some of this stuff is, right here is a link down below me. We will put it in the chat as well, so that can be something you can access even if you're and just click on and go to instead of typing it in because I'm lazy and I don't want to do that either. But I want you to know, like, if you want to look at this, here's the link where to go. We want to make sure that's readily accessible. So transformationprojectsd.org. As we're talking about it, I would be remiss if I didn't put it out there right away. Yeah, that just blows. I just keep coming back. I can't get it out of my head that what you said about 100% of those people have attempted self-harm, suicidal behaviors within the population that you've talked to, which I know isn't thousands or hundreds, but still,
No.
100%.
Yeah.
That's not something that we should just brush under the rug. Say, there's only 5 people you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
What is, if that's been something the case for one person, that's too many.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what? Obviously, these people have had these thoughts, they've had these feelings, they've had these emotions come through, and they've had these actions associated with it, but they bounced back. They didn't let that happen. And yeah, I mean, what? I mean, what? How do you do? How do you do that? I mean, what do you do that? What have they indicated that they've been able to use for resources for support to be able to bounce back when that kind of stuff happens?
So there's a few different things that we've seen kind of come to the surface of these conversation, and one of the big things is the internet and finding a community that supports them and they can talk to and find resources, but also the in-person support has been, I can see a clear difference of kids and young adults who have one supportive, knowledgeable family member like there for them, not a friend, but of like a mom or an uncle. And you can see, that has been something that has really shaped how they're coming through, coming out and being in this world as a non-binary person or a trans woman. And it's just very interesting to see like the kids who are coming out younger, it seems like I'm sure their parents are younger. So, the mindset is already shifting in younger parents to be more accepting and open minded. And they're also educating themselves. They're not just brushing this, under the rug that their kid is going through something and they don't know how to help. They're learning about it. So, one of the things we do at the Transformation Project is we have a couple support groups. One is for parents and one is for people who identify as trans, but helping parents find a space to talk about this helps them support their kids, and that circle keeps going, and we can stop that.
I mean, that's something I think we've talked about every week on this live cast, is the power and importance of a community.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to dig in a little bit more to what you just shared with that. I mean, I think it's telling when you said that the thing that they found the most helpful was a community online.
Mhm.
Are they finding from those people you've talked to within our state? Are they finding a community of support here, or are they going online because that's where they feel like they actually have some support?
Yeah, I think that's from what we're finding is that's the first place a lot of people will go is they'll find a YouTube video and they'll really resonate with that, and then they'll get on Tumblr, for example, and find a community there, Twitch, gaming, and I think that's just where a lot of people start. And now we're moving toward, for a state, we can have some in-person support groups where we give them the space to meet with each other and find, that they're not alone. And something I also heard from a few parents and participants this year is they saw the magazine from last year and it made them feel a little bit better about their kid coming out and being, out in the community and in public because there were others like them. And like, look at how great they're doing, and they have the support, and they have, this whole magazine devoted to them, and people are learning what it means to be trans. So I'm not so scared, still terrified, but it makes me feel better that, people are doing this work to help make it a better place.
And would you say that you mentioned like parents and family members? Would you say that the impact of a supportive family is more important than a community of supportive friends, or would you say it's half of one?
Mm-hmm.
Are they pretty split? Like I'm just curious what that impact is. I think that's something that we can all take into, like, where do we sit if it's not our family member,
Mm-hmm.
or it is our family member that's dealing with this stuff? Like where does that impact sit?
Yeah, I think, like, just from the people we've talked to and the other work I've done into looking into this topic, I think it depends on the age you come out as trans or non-binary. You maybe already, if you come out later in life, you maybe already have a fractured relationship with your family because there's a reason you weren't able to come out before, and that's probably, injured your relationship with family. And so then you'll lean on the support of your friends. But for the younger kids, like we had a participant from last year, I think she was 10 and had the most supportive family and did all they could to help support her and help her thrive. So I think it just depends on the age. It's a good mix of both, though. If you're not always going to have your mom there, supporting you at school. You need friends who are open and teachers who are open. So it's really a big community thing. But I think, the family, if your family is there, unfortunately or fortunately, all the time, and they need to support you. So I don't know. It's a mixture of both.
I literally just got done telling. I have two young girls. They're, in 3 and less than 1. So like that. I just told my wife today that I think parenting is the hardest job I've ever done, and I just think how, just how impactful just being a parent who loves on your children. And I don't do it perfectly. I don't do it well all the time. And I think about that, how much that can shape their view of themselves in the world. I thought, as you were talking, I thought of, it's an image that's been that's a video, image, GIF. It's all these things that have been on the internet of a guy at, I think it was a Pride parade, just wearing a shirt that says, "I'm a dad, here to hug." And all these people came because they wanted a hug from a parent figure, someone who can show them love and care and support. And I think, that what you're talking about here is like, even if it's, a family member, a friend, whatever, you can still show love and care for that person. And that seems to really have, sounds like what you're saying, a strong impact. I think that's powerful.
It does. And I was just thinking about that image, June, we didn't get to have our Pride in the park and Pride Parade in Sioux Falls, but I remember seeing that image, and I don't know if it was a comment or someone had said, like, how do you feel as a parent, like, knowing that your kid will literally hug a stranger for support because you're not there to support them? And we have kids in the project, and that we work with that their parents had kicked them out after they came out as trans. And we get, calls or emails way too often of someone who's about to be kicked out of their home and they need support. So yeah, it makes you think, I'm not a parent, but I have a niece, and like, what what would be so bad that you can't support them? And I think that's kind of what a lot of our people who support us, they're coming to that realization too. Like, this is not cool. They're reading the stories and they're resonating and they're like crying, and people who read the first magazine were just like crying through the whole thing, because it was pretty powerful. And yeah, parents make a difference.
Yeah. Well, that's something that's good to hear, but also a heavy thing to hear for me as a parent.
Yeah.
Make a difference. Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can already tell on a very base level when my daughter, who's like I said 3.5, says "oofta," and I go, "Oh no, you're very South Dakotan. It's happening." As you talk though, as you've talked to these individuals all across the state now, I'm sure you've seen some that are, like you said, you're seeing some who are really thriving, who are just like they've found their place, their thing, they're moving forward, and I'm sure you've seen some who are really struggling. Has there been any generalities or commonalities between those two areas? Like what has led some to really thrive and be successful and feel empowered, and what has led some to feel shame and pain and whatever else there might be that just keeps them held back?
I've been thinking about this question, and I reflect on it a lot, after interviews, after photo shoots, in what direction we're going to move. And it seems to always come down to family and those direct people you live with, your parents, and if they're supportive or not. And that's what I'm seeing in this small, cohort of people that we talk to, is if they have a parent, and maybe they weren't super accepting right away, but they came around, and now these kids, like, their number one fan and will fight anyone for them. So that's what I'm seeing is parents, they make the most impact right now in families. And for those who are struggling a little more, it's the absence of parents, and parents who maybe have kicked them out, and the inability to land in a safe, warm home where they, know that they have a place and they'll have food and they can go to school, be at the same school for, a long time, instead of having to move around to different friends' houses and relying on friends' parents. So it's family that I keep seeing.
That's, I mean, that's, by the way, I'm sorry if you hear the plane. I apologize. Dangerous outside life. But, if you, like you said, you're not a parent, it's not your family that's going on. Like, what are some things, as you mentioned, you already said that we have, with trans individuals, across the country, nationwide, worldwide, their risk for mental health disorders, self-harm behavior, suicide is high. It's higher than others. And as you indicate within your own qualitative research, like I said, 100% of them have, I just want to say it again for anyone listening, 100% have harmed themselves or considered / attempted suicide. What can we do if that's not, then if parents are a big factor, but you're not a parent, you're not someone going through that, but you're someone in a community, how can we show care and support and love to help them? Especially because, like I said, mental health disorders are a serious issue for anyone. And when you're more susceptible to it, it's like if you're more susceptible, like, I mean, honest, this is not the same by any means, but if I'm diabetic, and someone's giving me copious amounts of sugar, like, that's not helping me.
Not helping you.
That's even if it might be well-intentioned, it's the opposite of help. So what are some things that our general communities, people can be doing to show care, support, and help? And maybe some of those things that might be well-intentioned help, but not actually
Mhm.
helpful. Because, like I said, this is something that I have to acknowledge my ignorance here and say I don't know very much about, but I want to know how we can be there and show
Mhm.
support because that's important.
Mhm. I think one of the like main goals with the magazine, and it has been with this entire project, is to educate. So doing that work to educate yourself on gender identity and gender expression and pronouns and how do I use pronouns and why are pronouns important, and why do some people use they as a singular pronoun and that's not what my English teacher told me. Like, just doing your own research and like watching stuff like this or finding a book. We have tons of resources on our the Transformation Project website for books, and I think probably movies and different things you can do to educate yourself, and then get comfortable using those words and using pronouns, and listening to when people talk to you about things like this, and if they tell you did something wrong, to just listen to them. I think educating first is the biggest thing, and then showing up to different events. I mean, we sometimes will have protests, and you don't need to go and be a protester, but it really helps for kids to see that there are people in the community who would fight for them. Like when there's a bill that comes up that will severely threaten their health, that doesn't feel good. But when they can see that there's a lot of people in the state who do support them, it makes it so much easier. I have a white T-shirt with big, bold black lettering that says "Protect Trans Kids," and I just love wearing that around because you never know who you're going to impact. And if one kid sees me wearing that shirt and they're trans, it might make them feel a little bit better. And just getting out in the community. You can volunteer for our nonprofit. You can stay afloat of what we're doing, and we do a lot of educational stuff too. And we're happy to answer questions, and I'm happy to answer questions. And we have some great board members who are trans and who are leading great initiatives to educate people. But I just think educating yourself and doing your own research on that first, and not always placing the burden on people who identify as trans or non-binary to answer your questions. That's tiring for those folks. Lean on other people. Don't always go to the same person for your
Yeah,
information.
that can be. I mean, that can be exhausting at any point.
Mm-hmm.
Anything if you're getting, if
Mm-hmm.
you're someone who is known to be a part of a certain community and ask that a bit. If it was something as simple as a tech question, that can
Mm-hmm.
get old. And let alone this is, you're getting asked, and these are very personal
Mm-hmm.
questions. That I think that's a great challenge is to focus on educating yourself. And in light of that, you mentioned this, and I think it'd be good for people to hear a little bit more about it. But pronouns, like
Mm-hmm.
what when if this is a brand new concept to anyone, which it might be for a lot of people because
Yep.
it's relatively new. Can you explain a little bit about what that looks like, what that helps with,
Mm-hmm.
and how that can be um, a way of showing support?
Yeah. So pronouns, I think, is something that takes some people a little bit of time to get used to. But for example, it's easy to assume someone's pronouns. I might refer to you as he because that's just what I am like in my brain. I'm looking at you and your name is Nathan, and I'm going to say, Nathan, he likes chicken nuggets. And, I'm going to say he, and
I
you.
do. I was just sorry if you caught me. My wife texted me and said I'm not very sneaky. By the way, I'm trying
You
to finish
got
my
some
lunch.
chicken.
I tried to finish it.
Yes. But for maybe those aren't the pronouns you use. And so if I keep referring to you as he, and he and him, and that those aren't the pronouns you use, it hits in a different type of way that someone who is cisgender, who, so someone who is like, I consider myself cisgender. So I was assigned female at birth, and I identify as a female. So I use she, her pronouns. And I will never know what it feels like to have someone refer to me as the pronouns that I don't use. And, just because you see somebody who you think might use the she, her pronouns or he, him, that's not always the case. And if you make a mistake and you refer to someone as, the wrong pronouns, we call that misgendering, and someone corrects you, just go with it. Don't question it. Don't, argue with it, make a big deal about it. Pronouns can save lives if you use the correct pronouns. It can really help validate folks and help them. Just it puts so many things at ease once you start using the correct pronouns. Like, we've talked to some kids and their parents will tell them as soon as they started calling their daughter by she, her pronouns, she just changed. Complete difference, like night and day, and mental health increased, and it just makes things better. So, I think there's also some controversy about using they as a singular pronoun. So, I might say, Michael, they like to go running, and I know in English I was taught that they is a plural pronoun. Merriam-Webster actually a few years ago jumped on board and said that it is fine to use it as a singular pronoun. It's really starting to become well used in research, like literature. So non-binary folks, not always, but will identify with they, them pronouns. So you would refer to them that way and just plug it in where you would use she or he, they.
That's really interesting. I did not know that Merriam-Webster jumped on that too, because I was thinking my English teacher, I can still picture her. She would have been mad if I was saying that.
Oh yeah, I've had a college professor in grad school not let me use that when I was writing a paper about trans folks and non-binary people. So, there's still work to do and to not let up. So I didn't let up, and she didn't listen to me in the end, but I did my best and I tried to educate her, and that's like really the most important thing, is to help make those little ripples, and we'll get there.
Yeah, and I have a couple other questions coming up here to kind of round up our time together. But one thing I just wanted to ask you, because I don't know, maybe you touched on it briefly at the beginning, and I'm just not remembering. But as you mentioned, sharing this with your doing this in grad school, like what was it about? What drew you towards supporting trans individuals and doing research? Like, what was it about that population that spoke to you and said, this is where I need to be?
Yeah, I do get that question a lot. So I'm gay, so I'm not trans, but I'm in the spectrum. Our wonderful rainbow family. And in 2015, I really found that there was such a misunderstanding and gap when it comes to gender identity. And that was when the state saw some of their first pretty harmful bills that came through our legislature, and really bringing to the focus of the work we have to do in the state. And there's not a lot of work done with sexual orientation and gender identity in South Dakota. Like, for research, there's not very many people, if any, doing that kind of work. And that was just a place I wanted to land. And, thankfully, through some happy connections, I found my way to right here to where I am, and have really found, a good space, and I'm enjoying it. And we talked about this, like, it's not always on that community to do this work. And that's what I strongly feel, is it's other people have to step up and start doing these things, and doing some of the work, because it gets hard and it gets taxing, and people get burnt out. So that's, it was just a lot of coincidences that brought me here. Just seeing the need, and my passion was always in LGBTQ health disparities research. So just kind of narrowing in on this gender identity somehow.
Well, that's very cool, very interesting. Thank you for being so open about your story too. I mean, that in of itself is a great show of courage to be able to share that inmost part of yourself. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. I guess not to we're getting close to that
Yep.
40-ish minute mark, which doesn't mean anything. We could talk for another 77 minutes, and that's fine. But I do want to know what you mentioned it right away at the beginning, that you said that you do have some hope about what's coming up, what you see. So, what are some of those things that give you hope? What are those things that you are just feeling really good about, really optimistic towards?
There's a lot of things. So, first, like this nonprofit I'm involved in, this didn't exist a year and 3 months ago. And now we have a board of, 10 people, and we're expanding that board. And we have, already touched so many lives and gotten a lot of attention. So, that in itself gives me hope, is that we're getting people to buy into our message and help support us, and we have volunteers like no other coming to events and helping us with things. And they're people I've never met, and I would never expect, looking at them, making that assumption that they wouldn't be somebody who would want to help fight this fight. um, I think also just the fact that from last year we had 14 people and doing the magazine, and now this year it's double. That gives me hope as well, that some people who were on the fence last year decided they wanted to do it this year because they saw what it looked like, and wanted to be a part of this. It's really definitely making history in South Dakota to be able to put this, increase this visibility. I just the reception I've gotten from all of this work, and anytime someone asks me about the things I do, and we always connect. Like someone's like, yeah, my coworker's kid is trans and they just came out, and can I give them your number and help connect? So there's all those connections being made. I'm also seeing parents being like their kids' number one supporters this year for the magazine. It's been great to have, we'll do the photo shoot, and the participant will come, and they'll usually bring mom, is usually the person that comes along. And they're just like such a close relationship. You can see it. And that makes me really happy just to know that that's happening. And I'm seeing it more and more with participants. So I don't know. I have a lot of hope. I know we have a long way to go, but people are buying into the mission and supporting us and really helping us fight this fight. So I'm more hopeful.
I love that. Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's exciting to hear. I don't know, for some reason, the thing that you said with sometimes you see people who you just don't think would be,
Mm-hmm.
just make that assumption based on appearance and
Yep.
persona, that they wouldn't be part of this, wanting to help make change,
Mm-hmm.
and they are
Yeah.
making a change, and I think that's really cool. I love hearing that. So thank you for
Mm-hmm.
sharing that piece. Do you have? I know we'll throw this up here again. Um, I know a lot of the resources that you have that people can reference if they're trans, if they're working with someone or connecting with someone or care about someone who's trans. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of this stuff can be found
Yep.
on the Transformation Project website, correct?
Yep. Yep. And our social media, I would say, we're very, very active on social media, and we have Facebook and Instagram where we're most active, and we do share a ton more resources daily on different stories that are coming up or different conversations to have.
And what's your handle? What's your your like at
Um,
whatever?
yeah. So for Facebook, I think we're just the Transformation Project SD.
Okay.
I'll type it into so we also have two Instagrams. So one I have, so I take the photos for our magazine. So I just put that one in there. Transforming Sodak is where we share little pieces of participants and stories before the big launch of the magazine. And then this is the project overall, the nonprofit. But on Facebook, I think we're just Transformation Project SD, but we're most active on Facebook, I'd say. And
Gotcha.
when I'm doing magazine stuff and photo shoots, the Transforming Sodak Instagram is, um, I amp up the content there too to let people see what we're doing and what the next edition might look like.
Perfect. I'm gonna put this in the chat. Project SD on Facebook. So I tossed all those in there. And I want to add my 2 cents in here too. We've talked a lot about mental health issues today. We've talked a lot about self-harm and suicide. So if you're looking at some of that, our website, we have lefprevention.org/in-crisis. We do have a lot of resources there. And if you are dealing with something, or someone in crisis, we have some stuff here, but get help sooner rather than later. We want to get people connected. Talk to the helpline, talk to NAMI, talk to a local counselor. But if you're in a significant state of crisis, like get help right away, because you have value. I don't know you, I don't need to know you, but I guarantee, because just who you are, you have value. And so look for resources where they're available. If you want to chat, want to learn more about what Lost and Found does, check us out at Resilient Today. That's our handle across all social media. I was lazy and didn't swap those other ones in banners because they were coming in. I just thought I'd share them in the chat so we can get to those easily. But at Resilient Today, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And you can stay apprised of anything that we've got going on. And we also try to share a lot of resources, Michaela. So we try to live out our spaces there. And then lastly, before we go, Michaela, I've got to ask you, we've talked a lot about resilience with others, but what have you specifically been doing to keep yourself resilient? You've been dealing with some heavy stuff.
Yep.
We're in the midst of COVID, we're dealing with everything else, but as you look, the power of stories is that they can be very impactful. The power downside of stories is that can be very impactful for the person collecting them. So how have you remained resilient through all of this? I'd love to hear that quick.
Yeah, you're right. It's totally, it can be heavy topics that we talk about with interviews. And I think the thing that helps me the most is debriefing with those around me. Without sharing too many details, I'll talk about it with my mom and my sister. Like, I just got back from this interview or this shoot, and like, this kid's mom kicked them out, and they were, in a different state and somehow ended up here because they had to bounce around, and like, we'll talk about it. So I'm just finding that, I don't know, openness and willingness to talk about those things instead of keeping them in is something that I've had to work toward, but it is heavy stuff. And I just have to talk about it with, my partner or folks on the board of the Transformation Project, people who are helping me with the magazine. And we talk through those things. And I think that's the biggest thing, because it's heavy and it's a lot of stuff, but I enjoy being there and listening to all of the things that come up, and they go so many different directions, the interviews do, and I love it. But it does, people, once they're able to start opening them up, they open up, and it's like goes and goes, and you hear incredible trauma that no one should ever have to deal with. So I would definitely say, like, leaning on my friends and my family and talking about it is how I've been able to stay motivated and, excited about this kind of work. And then just obviously seeing the impact it has is totally makes it all worth it, and helps me kind of get through any struggles that I'm having. So I read a lot too, and I have foster kittens. So, everything helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one thing I'll just leave everyone with here who's watching it live or later, community seems to be a big deal. So finding a community of support, whether that's a friend, anyone else, a bunch of people, a small group of people, a person, find your community. They're going to find people that can support you, and you want to be a support to others. So look at that as an action item for today, if we were going to have one. Let's find a way to be a community of support. And I just want to thank you again, Michaela, for being here with us today, sharing your research, sharing your voice, sharing your heart. It can be really hard to do all of those things. And so I appreciate you taking the time. And as you all are watching, Voices of Resilience will continue. We're not stopping anytime soon. But this next month, we're definitely going to be focused on, we are focused on young adult resilience, but we are very much located in the college realm in a lot of ways. So we're going to take some time this next Voices of Resilience to talk with someone about how to get ready for the coming year, for students and how to be resilient. And let's be real, this can be something you can apply to anything you got going on. So we have Vice President for Student Affairs, Corey Ross, over at Spring Arbor University in Michigan. He will be joining us next week, August 6th on here. And then we'll also be talking about ways to stay well and be healthy. So students, the freshman 15 is not, it's not real, but the freshman 5 is. And so, and sometimes I think mine was the grad school 50 or something that happened. So we want to make sure that we're supporting you. So we're going to talk about getting prepared, being well this next month. So join us here every Thursday. Times flexible, as you can see, but Thursday locked in. But thank you again, Michaela, for being here, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Cool. Yep. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.